why Dan Clair as a PI? And then how did you convince him that this technology, which is sort of against most physics, was something for him to get involved in?
Well, I think there are a couple things to unpack there. I mean, Dan is one of the most respected vascular surgeons in America, and in many ways is known as someone who, you know, isn't purely endovascular, isn't purely surgical, because vascular surgeons can do both, but someone who carries a lot of weight in the community and really is someone who would thoroughly assess a procedure like this. And so we wanted to work with those folks that weren't going to be the people who jump on every new technology that come through, but were going to be the ones that could really help us understand the technology and then ultimately be key opinion leaders, advocates for the technology, if they're convinced, right? And that's, you know, you set the bar. You know, we're not out there trying to just, you know, get something out there as fast as possible. We want to make sure we know how it works, and we want to develop the evidence and demonstrate that it does work, and then be able to kind of transmit that to the community. And Dan was a perfect person to do that. It did take some convincing, but and he joined us for the Promise One study, and then as a primary investigator, and then came on for as well for Promise Two.
Dan Clair, whenever a new procedure hits the market, there's always a learning curve with that. And typically that can be a challenge based on the complexity of the device, complexity of the disease. What was your experience on the learning curve? And since your first case, and then your last case, most recent case, what have been the learnings on your side?
So I do just want to add a little bit to the question you asked me before, and add a little bit to that will hopefully add a little bit to this too. Venous arterialization was first proposed over 100 years ago, in fact, almost 120 years ago. But the ability to do it percutaneously is something that was just developed. And that's really what the Limflow product and Limflow equipment is for, is, you know, built specifically to allow us to do venous arterialization through a percutaneous approach. And that's important in these patients because they don't have a lot of blood flow to be able to heal long incisions and large operations. And many of these patients also have heart disease, lung disease, and diabetes, and as I said, obesity, which can make open surgical procedures very difficult to do. So the goal here in doing this percutaneously is incredibly helpful in reducing the overall morbidity to doing this. And vascular surgeons in particular tend to be the people that these patients see at the end of this spectrum of disease, because we're basically, you know, the last group of individuals who can offer these patients potentially anything, you know, in this situation. The Limflow procedure has allowed us to salvage some of these limbs that clearly we would not have been able to without another approach.
I think that's a great point, and I would expand on that. I mean, this is in many ways what medtech is good at, right? Which is trying to take a concept that's been thought about, hypothesize, test that method of action, but at the same time make it easy to do or easier to do, make it reproducible, teachable, and ultimately adoptable by the community. Because it's great if there's a physician, and you find this in surgery, often they're just people with magic hands that can do amazing things, but the goal ultimately is to make sure that your average patient can have access to an average center with an average physician who can do this successfully and get the outcomes, because that's how we, you know, make the most impact. And by getting the right toolkits, different pieces of devices that we've developed, and learning how to teach it, and ultimately continuing to iterate the procedure and product, we get to something where we know that this is something we can put out into the community and it can be adopted and applied. So that's been the mentality. And yeah, the idea is an old one, but this is really, we think, the ultimate manifestation of how it should be done. 2 small holes.